This is Craig Mertens, Director of Product Education for Inktavo, the parent company of GraphicsFlow, Inksoft, and Printavo. I'm going to talk about the 5 common mistakes that screen printers make when they're printing with spot colors. The first mistake I want to talk about is offering your customers too many choices for ink colors. And so what you're seeing on the screen right here is the color chart for Union Ink. This is the standard chart for Plastisol colors. It corresponds to all the common athletic colors that you'll see for teams and sports. If you limit your customers to these ink colors, or at least you try to steer them into these ink colors, you're not going to have the additional cost of mixing a custom ink. Also, if you do need to mix a custom ink, it would be a standard practice to actually charge a specialized fee just for doing that process, because you're going to have extra ink on the shelf after you're done. There's labor involved in doing this, and also you're going to have to invest in all of the base colors that are required to mix that custom ink. So what if I'm working with a corporate customer? They have very specific color requirements. Maybe they have a Pantone color that we need to match to, and they come to me and they say, hey, listen, our corporate color is this Pantone 299, and you don't have a stock color that matches that. You're going to have to mix a custom color. And in order to mix that custom color, you're going to have an inventory of the base colors needed to mix that custom color. Every major ink supplier will have a mixing system that will allow you to match Pantone colors. In the case of Union Ink, they have their Mix Opaque system. You would download an app. In that app, you would enter in the quantity of ink that you need to produce, and the Pantone color, it would give you a formula by weight. You'd mix those colors together, and you'd get a custom ink that matches a Pantone. Now, you're not going to be able to avoid doing this in every circumstance, but you can certainly deter clients from doing custom inks by steering them into your stock colors, as well as by charging a fee for mixing custom ink colors. The second mistake is not limiting the number of colors in the graphic. And specifically, if you're working with vector art and spot colors, you're going to have to create a screen for every color in the design. And since your customer probably doesn't understand how screen printing works, it's important to have that conversation up front so that we can keep that costing within their budget. I'm going to show you how to easily recolor a design. Whether you're doing this in Adobe Illustrator or CorelDRAW, it's pretty much the same process, but this is a vector graphic. I'm logged into my GraphicsFlow account. I'm just going to click on this graphic right here. This graphic was originally created in Adobe Illustrator. I'm going to go over here and click on Customize. And I'm going to see a list of the colors that are in use. So in this case right now, this design is currently a 5-color design. If you're going to print this on dark, it actually is going to be a 6-color because you have to accommodate for a white underbase. So what I'm going to do is a little bit of consolidation of colors. I'm going to take this orange color right here, and I'm going to mix this down to the beige. I'm going to do the same thing with this color right here. Mix that down to beige. And now I have a 3-color design with an underbase. Having that conversation up front with your customer about charging based on the number of colors in the designs is going to help you to avoid some headaches down the road. And if you're using vector artwork, it's typically quite easy to consolidate colors by merging them together to get the overall color count down. The third common mistake that people make is mixing different color palettes or color swatches within the same graphic. So ideally, you want a single color swatch or palette to be used. That's going to be a spot color palette, typically Pantone matching system. And in this case, what we've done is we've taken a design, I modified this in the GraphicsFlow platform, recolored it, and I put a combination of spot colors that are Pantone and some RGB colors. One of the things that I would suggest doing is setting up your separations preview so you can see the separations. And you notice nothing is showing up in here, and that's because I need to change my color mode here to CMYK, and I should also select Overprint Preview. And the giveaway that I have mixed color swatches is we're showing some Pantone colors, and then we're seeing these CMYK colors here. And if I turn off CMYK, you're going to notice that those colors are going to disappear, primarily the blue and the gold. So what I need to do is recolor the graphic so the colors in the graphic are Pantone. Now, if you're not subscribed to the Pantone subscription with Adobe and you no longer have access to the Pantone colors, you can absolutely download the Freetone color swatch library. It simulates all the Pantone colors. These are also all spot. But if you do have Pantone colors available, easiest thing to do is just recolor to Pantone. I'm going to select this outline color right here. I'm going to make sure that stroke is selected over here. And I'm going to pick my color right down here in the library, Pantone 289. We've recolored that. And you notice it's showing up under swatches now. Over here on the navy element right here, we have that element. I'm going to switch over here to fill, and we're going to color that. So that's pretty straightforward. We've got the blue recolored. But there's another way to do it, is if I just select a color over here, and I go to Select, Same, and same fill or stroke. In this case, it's a fill color. I click on that, it will select everything, and then I can go over here and select my next color. So I'm going to select Pantone 123, and we have this recolored. And you'll notice if we go over to the separations window now, I can turn off CMYK. None of the colors disappear because there's no CMYK or RGB colors in the design, and I can actually see my separations here. And one of the nice things about separations is when we go to print separations from Adobe Illustrator or CorelDRAW, it will print out a solid black image for each color in the design. A best practice is not mixing between different swatch libraries or palettes, and that's always going to be problematic when you get artwork supplied by your customers. So you just have to know how to fix it so you can consolidate everything into a single swatch library and get those separations set up. The fourth mistake people make is having objects or text in their designs that are just too small to correctly screen print. And that becomes a particular problem when you're dealing with logos from customers and you're shrinking them down to a small size, like a pocket size, and that text is just too small to print. You're pressing ink through a screen, you might be getting dropout where the ink's not getting through the screen, or, because you're using pressure, it's causing the edges to become muddy looking because, the ink is spreading out. A couple ways to resolve that. One could be on the press when you're creating the screens, going with a finer mesh, 155 to, 230-ish, somewhere in that range. You can also play around with exposures, but the easiest way to fix it is just to correct the graphic. What I have here is an Adobe Illustrator formatted design template. I downloaded this from my GraphicsFlow account. I resized it so it was a pocket size, and I'm noticing a problem area, and that's this area right here with the script text. And the script text is going to be problematic at a small size to get this to properly print. I can just select it, hold down my Shift and my Alt key, and scale it up proportionally. But the easiest way to fix this is just to add a stroke in the same color as the fill and expand that stroke. So I'm going to make sure that stroke is selected over here. I'm going to select the white from over here. We're going to add a stroke. 1 point seems to work. The easiest way to resolve issues with small text or objects is to simply make them larger, but you also have the option of adding a stroke in the same color as the fill to widen the graphic so it prints better. The fifth mistake is not having a working knowledge of how PostScript halftones work with spot colors. And one of the tricky parts about that is halftones are not something you're going to see on screen. If you take black and you want to create a shade of black, a tint, and use that instead of gray, you can apply a PostScript setting to that gray object, and you are still using black ink, but that dot pattern of black ink is going to look like gray. You're not going to see that on the screen. You're applying settings to that vector object or color, and so when you output color separations, those settings are telling the printer to print out a specific dot pattern. What you see here is a typical halftone pattern. There's three primary components to a halftone. You have dot, frequency, and angle. So the dot is the shape of the dot. In this case, it's a round dot, but they can be other shapes. You also have frequency as expressed in LPI, lines per inch. So the more dots that go into a linear inch, and the higher that value is, the smaller the dot. And then you also have angle, which is not the angle of rotation of the dot itself. The angle is the angle of offsetting rows. So this right here is the angle. These are all rows, and this is the offsetting row. And angle is very important because if you don't use the proper angles with your particular screens, you're going to get what's called a moire or a blooming pattern, which generally looks pretty terrible. I'm going to create a drop shadow effect with a halftone using this vector graphic. The artwork does need to be a spot color. In this case, I'm using Pantone Black C. I'm going to select the bottom layer. I'm just going to move the tint slider over, and that's going to turn that bottom layer into a gray color. And in order to print this, I'm going to need one of two things. To print a halftone, I'm either going to need a laser printer with a PostScript driver, or I'm going to need an inkjet printer that has a PostScript RIP software. So without those two types of printers, there's no way to output halftones. To output the separations to film, I would select my PostScript print driver or my RIP under printer. I'd need to select a PPD file. Then I would select output. Under mode, I would change to separations. Host base would be for a PostScript print driver. In RIP separations would be if you're using a RIP. If I'd like to make changes to the PostScript settings, I could select that color black right here. And then in the little drop down, I can adjust that setting and I'll just turn it to 45. Outputting halftones for screen printing is a straightforward process provided you understand how halftones work and you have a RIP software or PostScript compatible print driver. One of the advantages of GraphicsFlow is we've avoided these common mistakes when we've created our design templates. All of the files are production ready. You can simply take a design, easily modify it with the stock art customizer, and go straight to film.